We have enjoyed having Lisa Wingate as a guest here on Moms Every Day Before. We're so glad to have her back in the studio today talking about her newest release, the book Firefly Island, just out this month. Lisa, thanks again for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
I wanted to jump right in and talk a little bit about blogging. The main character in this book becomes a blogger. Why do you think that blogs have become so important to women? The mommy blog is a phenomenon all over the internet. What is it about blogs that really seem to appeal to women?
You know, I think that appeal has probably always been there for women. I think back in our grandparents' day and stuff, it was letters and staying in touch over letters and whatnot. I can remember when my family used to send reel-to-reel tapes back and forth. We used to make the reel-to-reel tapes and send them back and forth. And so I think it's always been natural for us to want to stay in touch with the lives of other women. But these days, because so many of us are working and we're so busy and whatnot, we don't do our chores. We don't get together to do our ironing or our washing or our hanging our clothes on the line anymore. And so I think it's sort of the equivalent of the back fence, getting together and visiting.
And being able to share your family's news.
Yeah.
You are very active online, blogging, social media, Facebook. What is it that draws you to share that information?
Well, first of all, I'm just nosy enough to know what everybody's doing, I guess. But I don't know. I think you're seeking that connection with people, and it's interesting to keep in touch with people you maybe don't see all the time or haven't seen in years or maybe would never meet. It's interesting to make that connection with people and get to know a little bit about lives in other places. And every once in a while on Facebook or whatever, I like to just post, what the view is outside my window. What's the view outside your window today? It's interesting to know what's going on in other people's lives.
Well, you mentioned the back fence, when we used to actually be able to go see our neighbors and talk about face-to-face what's happening in our lives. Is social media, is blogging actually a good substitute for that kind of sisterhood connection?
I don't know if it's a full substitute. I mean, I think we still need to make time for those face-to-face connections. And I think these days with our schedules and our kids' schedules and kids being in so many scheduled activities, it's harder to do that. So, I mean, I don't know that that should be your full substitute for having face-to-face connections with people and groups of women friends you get together with who have some things in common with you and whom you can discuss things with. But I think it's sort of a substitute for us for back in the day. I mean, when I was young, when you went into stores, a lot of times you were going into a place where you knew the people. When we went to get gas, we knew the guy who pumped our gas. And that's all lost in our culture. So I think it in some ways is a substitute for those things.
All of the social media, the blogs, et cetera, are also getting us writing. Do you think that that's an important faction of it, that we are actually chronicling our lives and our children's lives by doing things like blogs?
I think it's an interesting change because they were talking about all that being on a server somewhere, and you think about that's something completely unique to our generation, basically. This chronicling of people's lives, all these Facebook comments and everything all being out there when that used to not be the case. I mean, that intimate detail of people's lives being recorded is something completely new.
But you've said that you do think it's important to write down, especially the early moments in your child's lives. Why?
I have found that as my children have grown, that is some of the most precious writing that I did. Honestly, when they were little, I felt like I kind of quit writing for a while because it just seemed like when the second one came along, there was just no time. With the first one, I used to write, and other moms would say, how did you do that? And how do you find time for that? And I said, you just train the baby to play with its toys and all this. And then I realized the second one came along, he was not that way. And so, first of all, I realized I wasn't nearly as smart about motherhood as I thought I was. But I also realized that if I was going to write anything, it was going to be just short things. But there were these moments passing when I realized things or when they would say things that made so much sense to me. Like one time my younger son was in the bathtub and he was just asking me questions like kids do. And I finally said, why do you ask me so many questions? And he looked at me with his big eyes and he said, so I'll know everything like you do. And I realized that this little person thinks I know everything.
Everything. Wow.
And so those things, I wrote about those things, little essays and magazine articles. And now I realize how precious those things are to me and how I would not have wanted to have lost those moments.
So that you can remember those moments.
So that I can remember them and how it felt, and so that I can share them with them someday when they have kids of their own.
Okay, we got to take a commercial break. I got a lot more stuff I want to talk to you about. Stay with us. Moms Every Day after this.